Deputy Richmond, Deputy Boyd-Barrett and then Deputy MacDonald.
Taoiseach, is it not pretty embarrassing that Boris Johnson has managed to do a better job of rolling out the vaccination programme than your government? I mean, this is the Prime Minister who made an absolute hames of the initial response to the pandemic, and who, to put it mildly, has shown incompetence at many levels during this pandemic. But even Boris Johnson's government are streets ahead of us in terms of securing the vaccine and rolling it out. So, I mean, have you an explanation for how that could happen? That we could get it so wrong, and even Boris Johnson could get it so right? Because I think there needs to be a serious questioning. I mean, did you get any insights from Boris Johnson on the phone? Difficult as that might be, I suspect. But did you get any insights as to how they got it so right and we got it so wrong? And why our vaccination programme is in serious trouble and so far behind those, with potentially very serious consequences in terms of us being an all-Ireland epidemiological unit, high levels of vaccination in the north, pitifully low levels here, with all the possibilities that has of encouraging the variants and so on, which could undermine everybody. So seriously, in all seriousness, I'd like an explanation. Or have you got an explanation as to the incredible contrast between what we've done here on vaccination and what Boris Johnson has managed to do?
Thank you very much.
We agreed during our telephone conversation that we would meet for a more substantive meeting in the coming while to look more fundamentally at the British-Irish relationship post-Brexit, which I think is important. My sense is in the United Kingdom that the politics as it's being played is not a constructive one in relation to the European Union, and that the issue around the protocol was one that could have been resolved in terms of the dates, could have been resolved at the joint committee, could have been resolved within the joint committee, and there are more broader issues that also fall for consideration in terms of the refinement of the protocol, if that was possible. But what has happened here and what the British decision has been counterproductive to any response from the European Union. And the European Union now has no alternative but to take legal action and to invoke legal action in terms of the breach that has now occurred. And we've made it very clear to the United Kingdom on an ongoing basis, and I have to the Prime Minister, that unilateral action of this kind does not advance or progress these issues. They actually retard them and they're regressive. But one gets the sense that there is this ongoing narrative and polemic sometimes around the UK-EU relationship, which is not good. It may suit domestic politics, but it's not good in terms of a more sustainable, long-term, constructive relationship between the European Union and the United Kingdom. And that, to me, is of more fundamental concern than just a specific breach here. It's this ongoing approach towards the European Union. I mean, I just read earlier this morning the New York Times have a report that the EU could have exported up to 8 million of vaccines manufactured in Europe to the UK in terms of open borders. So the UK, the protestations do not stand up and do not stack up in terms of the EU approach to the United Kingdom in respect of vaccines. And in terms of the points raised by Deputy Boyd-Barrett, I mean, the first decision that the United Kingdom made was not to do the normal authorisation process in terms of validating a vaccine or not. In other words, we did wait 4 weeks for the EMA to authorise, maybe a bit longer, the various vaccines. The UK didn't do that. They authorised their vaccines under an emergency provision, which normally would not be done for vaccines because you're injecting into healthy people a vaccine. Now, people can weigh that up, and clinically, our clinical view was, or clinical advice was, that's not something we should do. That in terms of public safety around vaccines and protecting the public, we should go through the authorisation process. That gave a 4-week minimum start to the British vaccination programme. The second one was the one-dose approach, which is still one that there is divided opinion on, particularly around variants. And I don't know if you read recently the comments of Dr. Fauci in the United States, who has regular engagement with his UK counterparts, and who does readily say that there's no definitive science in this, but he would not, for example, approve a one-dose strategy. And he believes that, and others believe that can create a vulnerability around subsequent introduction and spread of variants. We've decided to stick to the data as presented by the companies, and NIAC, which is National Immunisation Advisory Committee, advises us on clinically in terms of how to dispense the vaccines, particularly in terms of dosage and in terms of the interval periods. And they do review their advice in the context of data that emerges in terms of the efficacy of the vaccines. And the Irish vaccine programme, 95% of what we get in, we give out within a week. That's not a vaccine programme in trouble. There's a broader supply issue. There's a global supply issue. And as I said earlier, the big 3 vaccine producers are China, Europe, and the United States. And they will remain, by the way, the key vaccine producers and manufacturers right through and beyond the summer. But we have succeeded in this country in already vaccinating those who are most vulnerable to disease and severe illness and death. And that is a significant achievement in itself and should be acknowledged in terms of residents of nursing homes, staff in nursing homes, frontline healthcare workers over 85s, and now progressively over 80s as well, and now that cohort with underlying health conditions. And the whole strategy has been to try and get the vaccines to those who are most vulnerable, because that gives them protection and then gives broader society greater opportunities and options in terms of how we conduct our lives once we have that done. And we are on target to doing that. The HSE revised the figures yesterday from 1.2 to 1.1. We got an additional increase this morning, or notification of an increase from Pfizer-BioNTech this morning. The big move in Europe at the moment is to see, they're scouring across Europe, can we create additional manufacturing capacity for the production of the vaccines? Also the relationship between the US and Europe is also important in this regard in terms of the avoidance of protectionism around vaccines. I think Europe has played this straight up to now in terms of facilitating other countries getting their contracts met that they would have entered into freely with the manufacturing companies. And I think that has to be said. In the context of Northern Ireland, which Deputy Kelly raised and Deputy Boyd-Barrett as well, I take that point. But I welcome the fact that Northern Ireland is doing well on vaccination, because it's good for the island. The more and more people we have vaccinated in the island, the better. And clearly, in terms of alignment subsequently, there will be issues. But we've got to move in accordance with the public health advice that we receive. We have to take on board the impact of the variant, but also the fact that we are getting hospitalizations down, we're getting ICU numbers down, and we're getting case numbers down. So what the people are doing out there is working, and the people's adherence to the guidelines is working and is having an appreciable impact on the reduction in case numbers and all the various
Thank you,
indices.
Taoiseach. Thank you very much.
And I think and in terms of the family care issue, and again, I've outlined the cohorts that we have vaccinated. We obviously want to move onto the next cohorts, and essentially the principle will always be those who are most vulnerable, and we do accept fully the case for family care.
All right, thank you very much. We need to move to question 3 and question